my victim.
Hello, legends. Welcome to a 2-in-1 monster special. So listen, we all know that Candyman and the Cenobites gang are two of the baddest monsters to come out of Clive Barker's bag. But could Candyman actually be a Cenobite? Well, it's not as far-fetched as you think. Candyman and Cenobites, especially the kingpin of the labyrinth, aka Pinhead, have so much in common. It really makes one wonder, what if Clive Barker himself likened Pinhead to Candyman once, and also to another super evil entity that inspired the character sketch of both Candyman and Pinhead? Can you guess who that is? Well, we've got it all covered for you. In this video, we'll thrash out all the similarities and difference between Candyman and the Cenobites, particularly Pinhead, and ascertain whether Candyman could be one of Leviathan. Quickly, before we go on, if you like our content, please support us by subscribing. It's a small click for you, but to us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's steer our curious cogs into Dimension Hell. Candyman and Pinhead, the common denominator. With slasher movies, eldritch horror, and creature films all coming into their own in the 1980s and 90s, one would think the horror scene had become too saturated to accommodate another subgenre, but Clive Barker once again showed us that he cannot be bound by the limits set by the living. He created the world of Hellraiser and Candyman, giving us some of the most iconic horror villains of the era. The Candyman being a Cenobite idea arose from many similarities that Candyman shares with the torturers of hell, especially Pinhead. Clive Barker, the architect of these horror stalwarts, may well have imagined them in the same breath. When the fourth Candyman movie was in its conception stage, there was even a plan for a crossover between the Cenobites world and Candyman's neighborhood haunt, and it's a crying shame that the idea never took off. Barker has drawn parallels between these characters. In the evolution of character Pinhead, he explained that just like Candyman, Pinhead is an entity that rolls with an aura of complete control around him. These characters are calm and precise in the way they behave and speak. They do not need grand gestures or dramatic scare tactics to instill fear in their victim. Pinhead would walk through a portal, slow as a snail, and Candyman could just stand there, deliberately repeating the name, Helen, and they'd still be more intimidating than the entire All Blacks rugby squad doing the haka. Okay, I'll take that back. After all, I've never been on the opposing team, but you get the point. Taking inspiration from Barker's comparison of the two, and for the ease of exploring this topic, we will compare Candyman specifically with Pinhead. Okay, as far as first looks go, Pinhead and Candyman could not be further apart from one another. At a glance, Pinhead is a bloodless, pale, gashed, and symmetrically pinned being with a leather fetish. Candyman seems like a pretty normal guy when covered up with his brown coat, except for the massive hook hand. Alright, my bad. There's nothing normal about that blood-dripping hook, but it also looks nothing like Pinhead's gear. However, if we look closer, we begin to detect similarity. Appearance and demeanor. Both Pinhead and Candyman have an elegant flair. From their signature long coats and high collars, inspired by religious vestment, to their unwavering stare and calm and intense manner, their monsters present a sophisticated style of meeting fear. They do not mask themselves or resort to twisted expression. The mutilations they carry over their body are gruesome, exposing their insides where their skin has been removed by torture. But in their immortal otherworldly bodies, they have become one with their ripped up scars, owning them as a mark of the undead. Both Pinhead and Candyman are rife with poetic gravitas and sexual undertone, which gives the character some well-earned depth rather than making them your regular stock killers. Pinhead is Hell's priest and torturer supreme, whose whole thing is the discovery of pleasure on the axis of terrible pain. He offers this route to victims, and they must hop on board whether they like it or not. On the whole, Pinhead is constantly giving off sexual fetishism vibe. Candyman, on the other hand, acts like a twisted lover, especially with Helen Lyle, the leading lady character who is obsessed with his urban legend. Their interactions are rife with sexual tension. He whispers in her mind how she belongs, breathing heavily over her when she's strapped to a gurney. He tells her about the exquisite pain he will give her. And who can forget when our man leaned over with his mouth full of bees and gave Helen a full-blown kiss. To this date, I do not understand how she escaped that holy mess without a scar. Both Candyman and Pinhead are seductive sadists, and the actor playing the titular roles in the original film, Tony Todd and Douglas Bradley, captured that facet of their characters to the T. The contrast between Candyman and Pinhead's appearance comes with the even arrangement of Pinhead's initiation torture. For instance, Pinhead's geometrically embellished head is the work of a masterful hand. His gashes feel designed, cosmetic almost. As for Candyman, his bee-stung body is a whole mess. He has a skinless ribcage and hollowed abdomen that nests a beehive that is always swarming. The body horror is the evidence of his horrifying past, and while there's a design to it, it clearly is a product of reckless hate. Overall, Candyman shares much with Pinhead in terms of personality and style, if not the physical visage and wounds. Origin story. Based on the character from Clive Barker's short story, The Forbidden, Candyman's look and backstory were altered significantly for the film. Candyman is an urban legend, and urban legends eke out their existence with a different kind of terror. One that's closer to home, passed down by word of mouth amongst the townsfolk. In the Legend of the Cabrini Green projects, a highly respected black artist named Daniel Robitaille was ostracized for falling in love with a white woman. An angry lynch mob was unleashed. They beat him up, cut off his hand, and stuck a honeycomb on it. The bees ravaged Daniel, but his soul passed into a mirror before he died, and the Candyman legend was born. Anyone who said Candyman into a mirror 5 times summoned the Candyman. Pinhead's origins are set across the Atlantic. He was in the British Army, a soldier called Elliot Spencer who fought in World War I. After witnessing the horrors of war, Spencer lost his faith in humanity and God. He turned to an extreme hedonistic lifestyle to distract him from life, until he came across a puzzle box in British India. He solved the lament configuration and beseeched the Cenobites to make him one of them, and after much torment in Leviathan's realm, he was reborn as Pinhead. Their backstories are totally unalike, one cast by racial oppression, and one by a severe case of post-traumatic stress. But their motivations are steeped in the deep trauma that each of these characters carried when they were human. Another thing is that in life, both Daniel Robitaille and Elliot Spencer were competent men driven to a horrific fate because of the cultural and political milieu of the time. They were also charismatic, smooth-tongued men, a quality they carried into their spectral incarnation.
Candyman. She turned out the lights.
It is your flesh we want to experience, not your skill.
The way they're summoned, both Candyman and Pinhead are unable to just show up in the world of the living when they feel like it. They have to be summoned, and the way this happens differs for them both. Candyman is summoned by a person reciting his name 5 times in a mirror, and Pinhead comes through when someone solves the lament configuration. In essence, though, they both answer the call of human curiosity or ignorance. All Cenobites, including Pinhead, are summoned by people of immoral character, driven by lust and desire. In contrast, Candyman can visit any unassuming person foolish enough to test his urban legend.
Allow me at least a kiss. Just one.
Immortality. Candyman and Pinhead are supernatural entities, and as such, their immortality is a given. But can their soul be destroyed? Yes, and it has been, many times in the past. Being the central figures of long-running horror enterprises, of course, they have risen from the rubble over and over again. And at the risk of snapping our marvelous viewers out of this video's supernatural zone, I'm going to say that Pinhead and Candyman are a filmmaker's dream, and therefore in no danger of getting cancelled anytime soon. Alright, before we go on, remember the super evil entity that inspired both Candyman and Pinhead's character that I told you about in the intro? So here's the dish. Candyman and Pinhead were based on the greatest undead entity ever created in horror history. Candyman's director and writer, Bernard Rose, pictured Candyman as a black Dracula as she wrote the screenplay. Clive Barker was greatly inspired by Christopher Lee in The Prince of Darkness and used this to pattern Pinhead's character for Hellraiser. Now, be honest, have you begun to peep any similarities between our guys and the King of Vampires? If not, take a moment to size them up again. Dracula was the original immortal fiend floating around, killing people and seducing women with that otherworldly riz. And the echoes of his personality and immortal streak can be found in our boys in Focus. Now, let's examine the hacking styles of our two monsters and see if they mirror each other. Kill factor. Once Candyman appears at someone's summon, he would rip them out from groin to gullet. With his buzzing hook, he's been known to show affection towards some victims, but that's not to say he isn't a complete stone-cold killer. He'll slash up or disembowel not just those who summon him, but also innocent bystanders, and anyone attempting to rescue them. Though every kill is different, Candyman likes to lead with a saucy prologue before he gets the deed done. This facet of Candyman shares eerie similarities with Pinhead, who's also known to deliver a line or two to his hellbound humans before capturing them. But that's where the likeness ends, as more often than not, Pinhead doesn't immediately kill. He chains and tortures the souls in hell, tearing them apart to the point of excruciating pain. The whole thing defies the laws of physics, but I would argue that physics don't apply in hell like they do around here. Also, Pinhead is bound by a code. He will only seize or kill the person who solves the puzzle and opens the lament configuration. His wrath is controlled by his code, whereas once the Candyman is unleashed, there's no limit to the damage he can do. Marvelous verdict. Is Candyman a Cenobite? Well, we've seen through the video that Candyman and Pinhead are both wildly unique characters, but if we scratch the surface, their nature and disposition have tons of similarity. They may have even been conceived in Barker's mind at about the same time. But the place where Candyman clearly branches himself off from Pinhead or any other Cenobite is motive. Cenobites were once seen as indifferent, hellish beings who followed a hedonistic path, of seeking inflicting pleasure through extreme pain. With the expansion of the Hellraiser franchise, they've fallen into complete villainy, with their desire for tyranny over the world rather than the order of hell that the comics often show them aspiring to. But whichever way you look at them, they seem to follow the code of their Lord Leviathan. Candyman, on the other hand, is a wild card. He is the patron saint of urban legends, as the producer of the 2021 Candyman sequel succinctly explained. While Cenobites live in the hellish dimension, run by Leviathan and work with his rule, Candyman is an interdimensional being. He has no qualms so far as slaughtering people is concerned, and he will live as long as his legend and human curiosity persist. But when he isn't summoned, he basically does not exist in any physical form. So while Candyman and the Cenobites, especially Pinhead, have a lot of commonalities, Candyman is basically a ghost, not a Cenobite. But what do you think? Is Candyman a Cenobite of sorts? Let us know in the comments. If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Go on now and get yourself some candy, man.